Welcome to Short Course, episode 104, for June 2nd, 2023. I'm your host, Ben Barry. This week, we're going to pick up where we left off last week with the second half of what I recorded last week, talking about lessons learned from the monthly Outlaw match that I help run. Before we dive into that, just a few administrative notes. First off, my wife, Stephanie Barry, North Carolina section coordinator, is due with our second child the day after this episode airs. So I would expect I'll probably miss a week or two of podcasts. Who knows? I might have time and stuff to talk about, but don't be surprised if you don't hear from me for a few weeks. That said, the election does start June 15th, so about 2 weeks after this episode posts. I have put together a landing page on my website, barryshooting.com/area6, all lowercase, all one word. And it has a link to my candidate bio, all of the interviews that I've done on various podcasts, which I think is 6. I think the 7th one will be coming out sometime close to the election. Link to all those interviews and, like I said, my candidate bio and just my general election information is all there. So that's kind of the one-stop shop. If someone is curious about me, what I think, my candidacy, that's the place to get all the information. So I would appreciate it if you would let people know. If you're in Area 6, obviously talk to folks, let them know, say, hey, have you thought about who you're voting for Area 6? And if you feel comfortable, share some information, maybe point them to a particular podcast. All the episodes of Short Course that I've done since last summer are available. They're up on YouTube. There's a YouTube playlist with them all in order. So if you want a place to get started or to be able to send someone a link, that's probably the easiest way to point them to a particular episode. But yeah, the election starts June 15th. It'll run through the middle of July. At that point, we will hear who won. If no one of the 3 candidates got more than 50% of the vote, the top 2 vote getters will go to a runoff. So if you don't know who to vote for and you're worried someone won't make the runoff, feel free to vote for whoever you want. If they don't make it to the runoff, you'll get to vote for someone else in the runoff. So no worries there. It'll just be a straight, 3 in the initial election, 2 in the runoff. So vote your conscience on that one. Other than that, that is all I've got. It's been a pleasure talking to all of y'all and running this campaign. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more from me as the election goes on and as the results come out. But obviously, you probably won't be hearing from me for a little bit just because big life changes. But I hope everything goes well. I hope everything is well with you. And I hope to talk to you again soon. On with the show. The next lesson that I wrote down, and this is actually a fairly recent one, I think maybe 6 months ago or so, we started talking about getting some of these Throom, so THROOM, that's the name of the company. They make these little rubber plates, knockdown plates that you can add to a stage and you can use them indoors. And the idea is the bullet passes through the rubber, but it self-seals behind it. But it's not the goofy kind of self-sealing targets that you just like put on the ground and shoot and then they jump around. No, this is actually on a hinged base, and you screw the base. Our current setup is we have them screwed into some 4x4 posts, which bring them up to about a 4-foot height, which is nice because we can have them. They don't have to be right up against the berm. They can be 5 or 6 yards in front of the berm, and so be a little bit, it just gives you more options in terms of where you plant it in the stage. It doesn't have to be all the way against the berm. But yeah, it has a little of whatever this rubber, self-sealing rubber base that you screw to whatever you want it to attach to, and then the plate is a separate piece that kind of hinges in the holes in the base. And so when you shoot it, the bullet passes through the plate, but it imparts enough energy that it knocks it down. And yeah, at this range, even though it's an indoor range, steel was a complete no-go. It just, if nothing else, the spall coming off of it, they have a bunch of, the ceiling and the walls all have a bunch of acoustic dampening material. And obviously if that stuff started picking up steel, that was a no-go. But yeah, these knockdown plastic targets have been awesome. And again, when I say plastic, I mean, it really is a rubbery kind of plastic that absorbs the shot. So again, we've had them for 6 months or so. They've definitely, they've taken 6 times 30 impacts. So, some of them have over 200 rounds on them, and they're still holding up fairly well. I'd estimate probably at least 500 rounds per before they start wearing out, but they're $50 each. So they're definitely not, they won't last forever. So it definitely is an ongoing cost. But in terms of just being able to add that little bit of challenge to an indoor match where you're going from even open paper to partial paper to an 8-inch plate has just been completely awesome. I love these things. I will gladly pay for them out of my own pocket just because the level of challenge, and not just challenge, but variety, the way you can mix them in with other targets and just make the stages more interesting is absolutely worth it. So if that's something, if you're involved with an indoor match and you can build something like that, like I said, just it's each one of these, it's $50. You put it on. We've got them screwed to 4x4s, and then we built a little target stand, a little H target stand that the 4x4 sits in. Whenever we get around to sort of rebuilding them or redesigning them, I would want to add a little bit of cant to the target stand just so it leans forward a little bit. We have had a few issues where people shooting low either into the base or into the target stand is enough to sort of rock the whole thing back, and the target will just fall over from that. So they definitely are on the sensitive side. I thought about maybe 3D printing a little wedge base just to go between the 4x4 and their base, just to give it a little forward tilt. I haven't really done anything with it yet, but I mean, the shooter at least has to shoot at it. If they shoot low, sometimes it'll knock it down. This is an Outlaw match. I'm not super concerned about that, but it's definitely something that as time goes on, I want to tinker with. But in terms of adding interesting variety to the stages, and even just things like on some of these stages where, you know, it's shoot some targets, reload, shoot some other targets, being able to say, you know, on the first pass through, you don't shoot the plate and you only shoot the plate after the reload. It's enough to mess with people's heads because they're so used to just transitioning and shooting all the targets, reloading, and then shooting all the targets. And so saying, no, I have to hold this target until after the reload. It's just that little bit of getting people outside of totally subconscious shooting, just shooting everything they see, that adds a lot of interesting variety to the stages, which I really appreciate. In terms of our range setup, so we built just standard 8-foot walls out of 2x2s with snow fence on them. So they're 6 feet tall, they're 8 feet wide, and then basically we use the cutoffs from the 6-foot vertical pieces to make some stabilizing braces. They work well. The wood, I think, is quite reasonably light. I built one wall that has a port in the middle. I built a couple of half walls, and it would always be nice to have more, but it's definitely, compared to the PVC walls that we have up at Sir Walter Gun Club, which as soon as you shoot one, it just explodes. These wood walls, they can take quite a few shots, and when the time comes that one of the walls gets so shot up, I can just unscrew that one side piece, replace it with another 6-footer, and it's good to go. So I would do that again. We use the system where our walls are anchored to the floor. We have some concrete buckets that have some 2-inch PVC in them. So we have 3 pieces of PVC in each bucket in a little triangle so that we can have, you know, angles and potentially have, you know, 3 walls coming into a single bucket, which we only do rarely, but it's nice when you're building them just to put 3 in each one, just so you have that option. When we were making them, we used one, I guess, 50-pound, 40-pound, whatever a standard bag of concrete is. We did 1 bag for every 3 barrels, which is probably a bit much. If we were to make another batch of barrels, which I'm sure we'll do one of these days, I would try going with 1 bag for every 4. That's probably still enough. And I think the key with the 5-gallon buckets is cutting the PVC long enough that it'll hold the walls, but short enough that you can stack the buckets decently. Because, you know, they're heavy, but when you stack them up in a wall, they actually don't end up taking up that much more space. So they've turned out to be pretty space efficient. They don't move around a ton. I am experimenting with a 3D printed wall stand that uses some 1/2-inch PVC as the legs, and then it, you know, basically accepts the 2x2 in the top. They're working. I've printed a couple for a couple matches, and they've ended up breaking, so I need to reinforce them. So I'm working on the design, but, you know, that'll be nice for stuff that isn't next to the shooting area. But the main thing that I really wanted for especially walls where they're going to be a part of the boundary of the shooting area is not having things that stick in the shooter's way where they're likely to be a trip hazard, which these 3D printed stands definitely are. So I'm only using those for when I want walls downrange or away from the shooting area. But for that purpose, they're lightweight and compact and cheap. I just got to get a design that's a little more durable. But I think this match was only the 2nd or 3rd month that I'd prototyped them. So still working on that, but definitely promising signs there. But yeah, the whole system of concrete buckets, wood walls, totally happy with that. I can't really see anything else that we would do. We do use 1x2 sticks taped down with Gorilla Tape. which works great. I've seen indoor matches where the fault lines are taped, and to me, that's just a no-go. It's almost impossible to administer because as an RO, you can't really tell when someone's over the line versus their foot is just on the line. As a shooter, you're not really sure when you're on the line versus over the line. And so, yeah, just have a bunch of 1x2s, just tape them down at the end of the night, pull them up, pull the tape off, and store them away. That's definitely, I've been very happy with that. And if there's one thing that we are flush with at this match, it's blue barrels, which we do have 19 of, compared to having 6 walls, 6 8-foot walls, one of which has a port in the middle of it, and 2 4-foot walls. So every match I'm economizing, trying to figure out exactly where I can spend this meager props budget. But yeah, 19 blue barrels definitely helps in terms of putting a target somewhere, stack of barrels to block the view from somewhere else. And those were there from previous matches at this range. That definitely has been a big help. And I don't know that we could get too many more of those just because they don't store particularly efficiently. Obviously, if we were to double the number of walls that we had, it wouldn't take up that much more space because the walls definitely pack away pretty efficiently. So, I think as this match continues, I think hopefully we can build more walls and have a place to store them, but I don't really see getting many more blue barrels just because they are so bulky to store. Now, in terms of USPSA, so first of all, this match has been a great experience. The number of people who want to come out. I mean, we have filled up 30 slots. The first match, I think, filled up in an hour. Basically, since then, we fill up in 10 minutes, maybe. I mean, people know they have to be sitting at their computer to register when registration opens, or they're not going to get to shoot, which is my biggest complaint about this match. Is I wish I could figure out how we could get more shooters in. We could add a third bay and go to 6 stages, but still only have 3 squads. But then, the cycle time, we'd basically be adding. We'd go from starting at 6:30, finishing around 9. We'd basically be adding another hour and a half to the match, which is not really sustainable. Or I don't know, maybe it is. Maybe people would be willing to be out shooting until 10 p.m. on a weeknight if it meant they got 6 stages, which that would be one way to get us from 30 to 45 shooters. But yeah, something to look at. The range has been happy with the turnout. It so far, logistically, just keeping it at 30 people per match has worked out well. But again, I'm totally humbled with the turnout. People really like it. My sense is we could probably run this match every Monday night and probably fill up at least 25, maybe 30 slots, especially if the word got out about it. So to me, if you were looking, if you were USPSA headquarters and you were trying to grow the sport, indoor matches, a weeknight 4-stage match like this would be the place to do it, because it's a much lower commitment. Typically, it's going to be, somewhere that's a short drive for folks coming, even driving 30 minutes. You can get pretty much anywhere in the Raleigh-Durham metro to this range, which is close to the airport. You can get to us in 30 minutes, where even something like Sir Walter is going to be 30 minutes from the north side of Raleigh. And so it's something where the time commitment to drive there is pretty low. It's a weeknight. You're not having to take a Saturday or a Sunday to go try and shoot your first match. To me, if you were, legitimately trying to grow the sport and actually make it as big as possible, not just replace all the people who aren't renewing their memberships, if you were actually trying to grow the sport by 5,000 or 10,000 new shooters that actually maintain a membership, so that the actual cumulative active membership of USPSA was something like 50,000 people. If you were trying to do that, the place to do it would be getting ranges like Triangle Shooting Academy that have these, honestly, frankly, great facilities. I mean, the lighting is better when we're shooting downrange than when you're in the actual bowling alley lane all the way at the top of the range, which is perplexing to me, but whatever, that's how they run it. This is a great facility for what we're doing, and we're one of the few activities that actually does it, that actually goes downrange of their common firing line. And so, using ranges like this to give people an introductory experience, showing up, shoot their first match, it's $20 instead of 25 or 30, which I think most of the outdoor matches should be charging more, because 6, 7, 8 stages, there's a lot of work that goes into that. It's a shorter time commitment. Again, it's easier to get a weeknight to go shoot one of these matches versus taking a Saturday or Sunday, getting up at 8 a.m. to be there at 9 to shoot at 10 until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Now, not all outdoor matches are like that, but I think there's a lot to like about this model. And I think the fact that it really does feel like USPSA is much more focused on big outdoor 3-sided bay matches, really focusing on taking away the tools from level 1 matches, like being able to specify things like not being able to run outside the shooting area and that sort of thing. To me, that's going in the wrong direction. Enabling clubs like this to run USPSA matches and giving them all the tools, I think is the way the sport should go, because it's so much easier to get into in terms of actually not just shooting your first match, but starting to build for the first maybe 6 months or a year that you shoot the sport. Maybe it's a year until you shoot your first outdoor match, but by then you've had plenty of experience. You've had a chance to go to a match, upgrade your gear a little bit, shoot a match again with the changes, shoot a match again with those changes, once a month type thing as you're getting into it. But anyway, the actual scoring of this match being time plus, I like it. If we had to go to a hit factor type scoring, that wouldn't bother me particularly. I think a lot of folks wouldn't necessarily understand it, but I don't think that would actually be that much of a barrier to new shooters. I think to some degree, when people shoot their first USPSA match and they're told, oh, you had a 7.5 hit factor, and they're like, well, what does that mean? And it's kind of, I think it would be nice if we did a little bit of a better job explaining, well, basically that means shooting minor, a Charlie is worth a quarter of a second. And at a 4 hit factor, it's worth a half a second, that kind of thing. And just kind of give people a shorthand for understanding hit factors, how points translate into time at that sort of high level. And then if they want to go deeper, then they can. But yeah, to me, that's when people shoot their first match, that's what I try and translate things to is, hey, if you're shooting a 4 hit factor stage and you're shooting minor, a Charlie is worth half a second. If you're shooting a 6 hit factor, it's worth a third of a second, and an 8 hit factor, it's worth a quarter of a second. That's it. So I think people generally can handle that, and when you put it in those terms, then it's basically just like shooting a time plus match to some degree. The math is a little more black box, but I think at the end of the day, if you put things in those terms, people can deal with it. I will say, if this were a USPSA match, we wouldn't really be able to set up a lot of the more prescriptive stages, which I think are interesting, useful, fair stages. And I don't know that we would really be able to set up a lot of the classifiers either. Now, there are definitely classifiers where all the rounds are going in one direction and you can set them up on an indoor bay, but setting them up on an indoor range alongside another stage is tricky. And I know I'm not the first person to deal with this, so I'm sure there are probably other ranges that have been doing indoor matches with classifiers, and they would have some advice for me. So I'm not trying to be the expert on this, but it's definitely something that gives me pause. Our current format, which I should have said this earlier, but if you go to barryshooting.com/stages, that will take you to my Google Drive folder with all the stages I've designed for all these matches for as long as I've been doing stage design. If you click the TSA folder and then go into the different months, you can see all the stages. You can see how we kind of break things up. And typically I'll end up building the one big stage and then finding a way to fit the smaller stage into it. And so, yes, there are USPSA classifiers that will fit on on an indoor range, but is it something where you basically have to set that classifier up and then tear it down, or, tear down whatever stage was there, set up the classifier and then shoot it, which is certainly possible. I know there are some clubs like Hammer Down Shooters in Atlanta that do it that way, where they set up all their stages. They have 3 squads that cycle through all 3, and then they turn over all the stages. And so you actually end up visiting each bay twice. And so in that way, they're able to have more sort of fully different stages. They're not kind of doing what we're doing, where both stages are set up simultaneously, which is certainly an interesting idea. I like that approach, but it's obviously not the one that we've chosen. But you'd basically have to do something like that for even the classifiers that can be shot on indoor ranges, which I don't know exactly what the solution is for that. I mean, I do like the idea that when someone shoots a USPSA match, the classifier that they shoot is almost a little miniature postal match where they get to compare their score to the best in the country. There is, I think, real value there, and I think we need to spend more effort improving the classifier system to take advantage of that. So I wouldn't just want to run 4 stages with no classifier, but at the same time, logistically, I'd have to figure that out. And so, yeah, that would be one where I'd probably talk to other match directors and figure out how they handle it. And then, yeah, at the end of the day, really, I would say that the main barrier to me, in terms of the 2 reasons that I am not eager to affiliate this match with USPSA, one is the more sort of stringent gear requirements yes, okay, you can shoot your, SIG 365 and carry optics, or, yes, technically you can find a place for each gun, but I do like the idea of it's just sort of run what you brung, and we're not really worried about trying to put everyone on an even playing field in terms of gear. You just shoot whatever gun is interesting to you, which I guess technically, now that I say this, yes, we could run a USPSA match where the only recognized division is open, but then at that point, classifiers don't matter. So if we were going to do that, yeah, we definitely wouldn't run a classifier. So, there's something to be solved for there, which maybe the answer is you run a match 1 week. That's the Outlaw action pistol match. And then you run the USPSA match the other week. You run 2 matches a month or something like that. And people can pick and choose which one they want to shoot. Now, what I will say is, to go back to that experience from the Wake match a few years ago, we would run the same stages twice a month. We would actually it was a Monday, and then the Wednesday the week after, we would run the same stages twice. And we would have some people sign up to shoot them both. And so we were filling 60, 65 slots twice a month, because for some folks, if it's a weeknight, it's not a night they're going to be doing anything else. They'll go shoot one or maybe both. And so I'm sure if we ran a match every Monday night, which we probably could, there probably would be a few people that would shoot 2, 3, maybe 4 times a month, just because, hey, it's Monday night. It's, the chance to go out and hang with my shooting friends. So, there definitely is, it's not like the two would not overlap in that way. But, I still like the sort of non-denominational approach of this match. The fact that we, it's not an IDPA match. It's not a USPSA match. It's a shoot whatever you want match. And that definitely brings out a different crowd. And then, at the end of the day, it really, I think the thing is having this match as an opportunity to try new ideas for stage design in a way that I always want stages to be fair. I don't ever want someone to just get screwed over and just have, some kind of random draw where they get the hardest possible combination of, bad luck, and they have to shoot the hard target from furthest away, or, something like that. I want these stages to be fair, but there's a whole world out there of ways that you can have fair challenges that don't fit into the current USPSA stage design rules, which, like I said, I think there's a huge opportunity there to improve that and to allow things that can be fairly administered, like you have to shoot one-handed from this special sub shooting area, or through this port, or after this mandatory reload, stuff like that. And I'd like to see more of that. And, for the time being, I think running this match the way that it is, affiliating with USPSA wouldn't get us more shooters, because we're already at capacity. We would have to pay USPSA money. And so it's really a lose-lose to affiliate at this point. But again, I could imagine a scenario where if this were being run every Monday and we, needed help getting more ROs to help run the match and set everything up, then affiliating it to help not just bring in shooters, but also people who know the rule set and can come help officiate. Because that's almost always the bottleneck with an Outlaw match like this, is people shoot it and they kind of learn the rules through osmosis, but they're never exactly sure, oh, how do we do this? We have a little 1-page rule sheet, rule book thing, but I don't know that anybody actually sits down and reads it. And so a lot of it is just, oh, go ask Ben, which works for a 2-squad match, but obviously is not sustainable to a national organization, or even to running this match more often than I want to be at the range, which, as much as I like the match, I don't know that I would want to be there every Monday, in addition to podcasting every Thursday and all the other things that I have to do for my job and my life. So this has turned into a much longer episode than I was expecting, so I think I'll end up cutting it into 2 pieces. So I think what you are hearing will be the end of part 2. Hopefully this was interesting. Thanks for listening. That wraps up this episode of Short Course. My email is ben@berryshooting.com. Talk to you next time.